What's up guys, it's the Sound Alchemist, and I am back to bring you 40 facts on the Warhammer 40k universe, and perhaps 30k, because today we are talking about the very requested Dreadnought. So without further ado, let's dive into this lore. To begin with, I will let you know that a Dreadnought is a cybernetic combat walker of intermediate size that is used by the chapters of the Adeptus Astartes as heavy infantry support for their Space Marine companies. So even the superhuman Space Marines are still mortal and they can fall in battle, but sometimes they can be interred into a living sarcophagus known as a Dreadnought. Dreadnoughts are war incarnate, towering machines that advance forwards with thunderous strides, fiery death roaring from the myriad of heavy weapons mounted upon their hulls. They are terrifying foes indeed. They fight with the skill and ferocity of a Space Marine, but with the combined durability and firepower of a battle tank. Now, Dreadnoughts are often mistaken by mortal observers for huge suits of battle armor or robots, but they happen to be similar to both, yet neither. They are a combination of an armored walker and a cybernetic life support system. Their pilots are neurally linked straight into the Dreadnought cybernetic systems, and that way they can use the walker as if it were their very own body, although the pilots are permanently entombed within its ceramite skin until they meet their final demise. Sometimes Dreadnoughts are revered as a holy shrine, and Tech Marines tend to their charges with great care, fastidiously applying sacred oil and undulants while chanting the litanies of preservation. To honor these courageous warriors, the fallen heroes are allowed to sleep away the centuries until need calls for them for war once more. Usually, Space Marines interred within the Dreadnoughts are often thousands of Terran years old, and as a result of their great age, many Dreadnoughts are known as Venerable Dreadnoughts, and are not only approached by their battle brothers for support in combat, but are also advisors in the governance of their chapters. For example, the oldest Dreadnought in the Imperium is Bjorn the Fell-Handed of the Space Wolves. He was a member of the Primarch Leman Russ's retinue and fought in the Horus Heresy when he was still whole of body, making him well over 10,000 standard Terran years old. But again, when these Dreadnoughts are not in use by their chapter, they are placed back into that chapel in its fortress monastery to sleep away the centuries until they are needed once more. The oldest known forms of Dreadnought date back to the Dark Age of technology, but it was in this later day conjunction with the superhuman physiology of the Space Marines that this technology has reached its zenith. By the 31st millennium, the art of their construction has been long since lost, the arcane knowledge required passing down to ritualized mythology, and each chapter's Dreadnoughts are now considered treasured relics. Dreadnoughts are a living embodiment of the machine god, representing the ultimate fusion of biological and the mechanical, as each one contains a living, sentient being. The pilots encased in the shell of a Dreadnought often have memories stretching back for millennia, and these ancient warriors are a tangible link to the chapter's past and heritage. Throughout the years, the Dreadnought has seen many different variants, but for now we will focus on the Contemptor Pattern Dreadnought. The Contemptor Pattern Dreadnought is an ancient Imperial cybernetic combat walker that was used by the Space Marines in the days of the Great Crusade and the Horus Heresy, 10,000 Terran years before the present day. Just like its 40k counterpart, this pattern of Dreadnought served as a cybernetic sarcophagus for an Astarte who had been so badly wounded in battle that his only chance for continued service for the Emperor lay in being interred within this Dreadnought. The Contemptor Pattern Dreadnought was once a staple of the armored might of the Space Marine legions. It was a more powerful combat walker than the current pattern Dreadnoughts that are in service with the Adeptus Astartes. It featured many technological systems that found a parallel in the combat robots of the ancient Legio Cybernetica. Unfortunately, the dreadnoughts bore the brunt of the fighting in every theater of war, and as a result, they suffered the heaviest losses. Like so many of the Imperium's most advanced and sophisticated war-fighting technologies, the ability to manufacture and maintain the Contemptor dreadnought was essentially lost in the chaotic aftermath of the Horus Heresy. The few of these relics that remain in service in the 41st millennium are incredibly rare pieces of archaeotech, even in comparison to their fellow dreadnoughts. But when they do take to the field, they are a living reminder of the golden age of the Imperium, when the Emperor still walked among mankind, and the foes of humanity tremble at the sight of its ancient glory. All Contemptor dreadnoughts were protected by advanced automatic shielding, which generated a protective gravity shield around the walker, and it used an advanced atomic power core. This core provided great protection from both ranged attacks and melee attacks as well. However, when damaged, the automatic power generator can overload and result in a devastating miniature atomic explosion, which can badly damage nearby units. Contemptors were generally outfitted with a twin-linked heavy bolter attached to one arm, and a massive dreadnought close combat weapon on the other, with an inbuilt storm bolter. Smoke launchers generally completed the standard weapon loadout. But stay tuned, because there will be a separate video on all the armaments and weaponry of the dreadnoughts. In the time of the Great Crusade, there was need for heavy fire support at longer ranges, and therefore the Contemptor Mortis pattern dreadnought was created. This sub-pattern used the more advanced Contemptor chassis as a potent carrier of heavy weapons. It was able to target and destroy the foe at close range as well as far range, and it used an advanced helical targeting array that allowed it to provide a Space Marine spearhead force with anti-air support as well. When the need for even more heavier firepower occurred, the Deredero pattern dreadnought became built. During the Great Crusade and the Horus Heresy eras, the Deredio pattern dreadnought was a dedicated heavy support frame, though it shared many core components and systems with the more general assault-based Contemptor class. These dreadnoughts wielded a large variety of heavy weapons, such as the twin-linked Anvilus autocannon batteries, the Aiolos missile launcher, heavy flamers, heavy bolters, and so much more. In the aftermath of the galaxy-wide conflict known as the Horus Heresy, the traitor legions were pursued by the vengeful Imperium and cast into disorder and retreat. However, they were eventually driven into the shadow of the greatest warp storm in the galaxy, known as the Eye of Terror. The traitors lost much of their cherished and sacred war gear, either that or it became corrupted and scavenged. Much of the more advanced techno-arcana was cast aside in favor of arms more readily manufactured and maintained by the forges of the Dark Mechanicus. But even during these dark times for the servants of the ruinous powers, the rare and few Contemptor pattern dreadnoughts were always held as the most precious resources by the Chaos Space Marine warbands, fortunate enough to possess some. Unable to maintain the Contemptor's original arcane armaments in exile, the Dark Magos replaced them with occult weapons of diabolical design, forged in blood and suffused by demonic force. One of these weapons was called the Soul Burner, which unleashes explosive blasts of demonic force that devours the souls of its victims. And another, the Butcher Cannon, was a heavy caliber rotary gun whose shells were bound with demonic runes in order to increase their penetrating power and murderous toll. Though few in number, these ancient relics have changed hands over the millennia many times over, and have carried out countless dark deeds in their wake. Chaos Contemptor dreadnoughts usually preserve the most powerful Chaos Lords, Dark Magos heretics, and sometimes even worse, demons. These walkers are a fusion of the power of mankind's lost technological might with the diabolic forces of the warp, and they create a killing machine that are more than a match for any fielded by the forces of the Imperium. Sometimes a Contemptor Dreadnought can pledge its allegiance to one of the four gods. For example, one dedicated to Khorne has been consumed by the Khorne Berserker Rage, and it increases its speed and velocity of its attack when it is engaged in close combat. Slaaneshi Contemptor Dreadnoughts are outfitted with sonic weaponry that mimic the effect and usage of grenades, and it allows it to often gain the drop on the enemy in ranged combat, while those in dedication to Nurgle are afflicted with the decay and pestilence of the Plague Lord, and they find themselves more resilient to external damage as a result. Those Chaos Contemptor Dreadnoughts that are dedicated to Tzeentch find its effectiveness, damage, and ability to target the foe with bolter and flamer weapons to be dramatically increased as a result of the arcane blessings of the Lord of Change. Before we move on to the Dreadnoughts of the 31st Millennium, we have one more pre-heresy Dreadnought to speak of, the Leviathan Pattern Dreadnought. The Leviathan Pattern Siege Dreadnought was created in limited numbers in the latter days of the Great Crusade, and it was developed in secret on Terra, away from the eyes of the Mechanicum. Its massive frame incorporates hybrid technologies, some dating back to the dim past of humanity. This dreadnought towers over Imperial Walker patterns, and it is heavily armored and savagely powerful in close combat. It was designed for siege warfare and primarily armed with close combat and support weaponry that can rend buildings, vehicles, and flesh alike, though it is no less effective when armed with the powerful and esoteric short-range weaponry uniquely developed for it. The Leviathan's oversized reactor allows it to bear weapons more powerful than any other classes of dreadnought, and also powers reinforce its psychic energy fields that surpass those developed for the Contemptor class. Power, however, has its costs, and the system of the Leviathan places a lethal level of strain on the minds of its occupants. And that brings us to the end of this multi-part Dreadnought lore. So please guys, subscribe and stay tuned because we have so much more epicness to talk about. We have the Dreadnoughts of the 31st Millennium, their weapons, the notable Dreadnought characters, and so much more coming. So why not give us a like and share this video so all your friends can know about the epicness that is a Dreadnought. Let me know in the comments what was your favorite part about this lore. Was it the dastardly, evil, chaotic Contemptor class Dreadnoughts? Or maybe you enjoyed the history behind these Dreadnoughts? Again, let me know in the comments below. And don't forget guys, we do have a Patreon page, so head on over there where your dollar can help us bring you more epic 40K content. And as always, thank you guys for being awesome subscribers. Your comments are hilarious, awesome to read, and very informative. Keep them coming guys. So with that, I am the Sound Alchemist, part of One Mind Syndicate, and I am signing out.